Hi everyone, and welcome to ABG Fireside Chat. My name is Nikola Kalanowski, and I'm an equity research analyst here at ABG. With us today, we have the CEO of Midsona, Peter Åsberg. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So let's start off with a little bit of an introduction of Midsona. For those that are unfamiliar with the company, could you perhaps walk us through the business as you perceive it?
Absolutely. What Midsona is all about is about healthy and sustainable food. Food that is good both for the people and the planet. So food that is healthy for you and your body, but also healthy for the planet. And this actually hits on to, I would say, two mega trends in society. One, our urge to stay healthy by eating healthy. And number two, that we together need to save the planet. And eating sustainable, plant-based foods is one of the main ways to actually improve and to actually save the planet. So that's what Midsona is all about. Then if we go a little bit more into the details. About just shy of 4 billion in sales 2023. Our home turf is really the Nordics. So we have a very strong presence in the Nordics. Stands for about 70% of net sales. And we have strong operations in all four Nordic countries. Then we also have a business in the DACH region, primarily Germany, about 20% of the business, and then a business down south in Europe, mainly France and Spain, about 10% of the business. Okay. The way that we get to the consumer is really via our brands, and we are in Sweden, so I guess that most listeners are Swedish, and then you will probably know a brand like Friggs, corn and rice cakes, dietary supplements, healthy teas, and that's a brand that we also sell in Norway and Finland. The organic brand Kung Markatta, just to take a couple of examples. Quite a lot of own production across Europe. And what we have done recently, and I presented that in the spring, was to set a new strategy and new financial targets to really transform Midsona for the future.
Yeah, wonderful. And I can say that as a consumer of Friggs, I love the
well, thank you.
rice cakes, and many at the office as well. So we think it's wonderful. I think if we look at the organic and health foods subsector, what would you say about its future and also perhaps Midsona's position in that future?
First of all, I talked about that already in the introduction, that we are riding on some mega trends here in terms of being healthy, being sustainable. Then, in the last couple of years, organic food has taken a little bit of a downturn. That's very much due to the fact that economic times have been quite tough for consumers. So they have basically downgraded, which I personally think is a pity, but I can understand that when interest rates goes up, there's quite high food inflation. I'm very convinced that we will come back and that organic will start to grow again. We see a stabilization now at the beginning of 2024. And as the economic situation of consumer improves, I'm convinced that it will get back to growth again. Then we are very well positioned with good, strong brands in each of our major markets.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that's very clear. And I think if we perhaps dial back to the last 2 years that you mentioned, they've been quite tough for everybody. Could you perhaps recap a little bit what Midsona has done in the last 2 years and explain how it's positioned now?
No, you're absolutely right. There has been quite some industry turmoil. And it really started with a terrible war in Ukraine. What that meant was that, from our perspective, that food prices spiked, and it took some time before we could pass that on to the customer. We also had supply chains that were quite broken, so difficult getting products through, but also at a higher cost. So we have worked on a number of items and issues at the same time. First, of course, get prices up again. Second, really working on our supply chain to make it more stable, and we have done that. done that in a lot of different ways. So we're much more resilient today compared to 2 years ago. Then internal efficiency, to really, really look at all of our costs and to try and bring it down. And 2022 was really tough. 2023 market conditions were still very tough, but we started to improve in terms of profit. And we have started out very, very well in 2024.
Yeah, wonderful. I think if we look at what Midsona has done, you've been sort of dialing back on size and investing in the products and SKUs that have been profitable. So could you perhaps let us know if that's the strategy going forward, investing in the winning products and shedding perhaps some of the less interesting products, so to speak, less profitable ones?
Absolutely. We have indeed a number of strong brands. And a big part of our turnaround has really been to drive those brands and drive them harder and make them even more relevant to consumers in a time period where consumers were really looking after the money. So we have done that, worked on the value propositions for the main brands, brought them to new markets, worked on the product portfolio, and that's quite a big part of the turnaround. Then there is no question that our portfolio has been too broad. It has been very extensive. And what we have done is to prune it, to really get down to the core, to shred SKUs and product ranges that were unprofitable or just added complexity to our business.
Yeah, sounds like removing some complexity is always helpful, you could say.
Definitely.
Yeah, and if you could just go into a little bit in terms of specifics, what sort of SKUs have you decided to divest? What does that process look like?
I mean, we have certain thresholds in terms of net sales, in terms of profitability, contribution margin, but also, of course, looking at the strategic impact and the technical impact. And that's basically what has made the decision. And then to have a plan to do it step by step so that we do it in the most cost-efficient way. So that's why it has taken some time.
That sounds good. And I think if we go into the geographic segments and products, you have some of these iconic brands that you mentioned in the Nordics, Friggs, Kung Markatta. Are there similar brands perhaps outside of the Nordics that you'd like to highlight that perhaps some of the listeners don't know about?
Yes, but I would actually like to start with the Nordic because I think we have mainly Swedish listeners here, and then you would know brands like Friggs, Kung Markatta. We have a very iconic brand in Denmark, the Urtekram brand, which is an organic brand, which is a leading brand in Denmark, but also has a strong position in Finland. In Norway, we have the brand Helios. It's also an organic brand. Actually, one of our best growing brands. If I remember correctly, we grew that brand by 35% in the first 6 months of the year. So that also shows that when we're doing things right, you can also grow organic brands. So that's a little bit about the Nordics. We have a lot of more brands, but those are some of the main brands that I would mention. In Germany, we have an organic brand called Davert. Strong brand in Germany, very well known in Germany. And in France and Spain, we have basically 2 brands, and one, Happy Bio, for the grocery trade, both in France and Spain, growing quite nicely. And then a more local French brand that is called Senat for the specialty stores. Yeah,
that sounds very exciting, I think. But for the Swedish listeners, of course, Kung Markatta and Friggs will be the ones that people will know. Would you say that you have some exciting brands that you are developing currently that are perhaps even more or less known, but that have high growth potential that you could see would take off in the future?
Yes, and I would say we have a number of sports nutrition brands, for example, Gainomax, that is both big in Sweden and Finland. But still, I would say that the brands that I've already talked about, those would be the main brands that we would continue to develop. And by meaningful innovation, and what we're actually doing now is that we have reorganized the company so that we can spread innovations faster across more countries. That's what we have done with Friggs very successfully. That's what we want to do with our organic brands as well. Of course, classical marketing, and then to be really, really good at in-store execution. So those would be some of the main themes to really drive our brand portfolio forward.
Yeah, and I think if we're close to wrapping up, what would you say are some of the operating priorities for the rest of 2025 and perhaps some of your ambitions for next year?
Well, last time I was here, I think that was in March, we presented, or I presented the new strategy. And one cornerstone of that strategy is to get to good growth for our main brands. So that's something that we focus quite a lot on. Then we have a EBIT target that is significantly higher than our performance today. It's at, we want to get to 8% by 2027. And of course, driving our brands will be a big part of that. Reducing complexity will be another part, but also working with our operations and production units to make them more streamlined and more efficient. So that I would say would be the main priorities. Then I would say that the business and the industry has come to kind of a standstill in terms of M&A activity. We have also not done basically anything in the last few years. The industry is still very fragmented. I think that there will be a new consolidation wave coming, and we for sure want to be part of that wave. So that's something that we look at. First, we should reduce our debt level. We have done so successfully. We will focus on that continuously this year, but I'm sure that over time there will be quite some exciting opportunities on the M&A side in this industry.
Yeah, it certainly looks like as you come down in leverage, you'll have a lot more opportunities to invest in growth in the future.
Definitely.
Wonderful, but thank you very much, Peter, for this, and thank you to everybody else for listening in.
Thank you so much.